Hello and welcome to the Balance Podcast. My name is Lewis. Each month I have long-form conversations with movement, bodywork and health professionals. This month I have Sophia Breust on the show. Sophia is a structural integration therapist. She treats out of her clinic in Adelaide in South Australia under the name Muscle Sense. Sophia and I talk about her history as a nurse and then her transition into massage therapy. She shares her history in dealing with PTSD, anxiety, and depression, and how massage therapy was the catalyst in the road to recovery. Next on that journey was specializing in structural integration, which was not only profound for herself, but also for her clients. And I also ask her, what is structural integration and how does that help clients? We talk about her current interest in terms of emotions within the body and also potentially in fascia. We then delve into her current step in her journey, which is breathwork. Although she's not a breathwork practitioner, she's experiencing breathwork and talks about the profound effects it's having on her. We also talk about burnout, passion, and how to maintain it, and a variety of other topics. So I'm excited for you all to have a listen. I've got all of Sophia's details in the comments, so please enjoy the show. Hello, Sophia. So nice to have you on the show. How are you this afternoon?
Good, Lewis. How you going?
Yeah, good. Hey, I was looking at photos of us on Facebook the other day, and it's been pretty much five, actually, in a couple of days, it's been 5 years since we first met in Adelaide, which is kind of shocking to think back how
Yeah,
much time has
yeah,
passed since then.
that's right. Yeah, 5 years. Wow.
Um, and in that time, like I've seen you pretty much grow from strength to strength in your career. It's been pretty impressive to watch. Because when I first met you, you were working as a nurse, and then you were just finished Remedial Massage, your training, or you're working as a massage therapist at that time as well?
Yeah, I was working. Yeah, working as a massage therapist. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm curious, what came first for you? Was it the nursing or was it the massage that came into play?
So I was a registered nurse first, and I did that for about 10 years in total. But I think I was around about 5 years in, thinking
Yep.
that I wanted something different, having lots of aches and pains in my own body, and
Yes.
then through the massage found the SI, the anatomy trains. And then I guess I just never looked back from
Yeah.
there. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where I met you 5 years ago. We met at Anatomy Trains workshop, and you were, yeah, as you mentioned, you were working as a nurse doing the massage, and then you were specializing in the anatomy trains.
Yeah.
And then I've seen on Facebook as well, you've been getting into breath work as well. Is that correct?
Yep. Yep. I've done some Soma breathwork training. So that's been quite interesting to release the fascia. So similar lines, but very much helpful for moving the whole body. Yeah, that's been
Right.
incredible. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to going down that rabbit hole with you in a little bit. So just to bring things back, are you still working as a nurse now, or you've let that sort of settle for now, or what's happening in that realm?
Yeah, so finally, I went back during COVID for a little bit to be a nurse, but yeah, I've given that up completely. I took the full dive into full time, business slash, actually making the structural integration a priority. That was a big step for me, but yeah, that was about 2 years ago. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, well, congrats for making that first step. I think we all face that moment at a point when we sort of take that step of leaving, I guess, not necessarily comfortable, but it's got comfort, it's got security, and then stepping out and just taking that leap of faith. So congrats, and 2 years
thanks.
into it now.
Yeah.
So you were doing the nursing for about 10 years. What initially made you want to become a nurse?
Well, my dad's a nurse, and I wanted to be a vet. I desperately wanted to be a vet for a long time. Um, and yeah, just found that, I guess, humans were, I guess my second best, I guess.
Yeah.
What do you say? Like, really still love animals and stuff, but being a vet at that time was just too hard for me to get into. And so I do love people. I do love people, and I love connection. I've always been a people person. So yeah, I just kind of fell into it, I guess, and that was the next thing for me, because family of nurses, it's still got that caring element, I guess, into it. And I found out I was pretty good at it. And I enjoyed it, the casual life. Nursing shift work has got its ups and downs, but yeah, I think I really loved the caring side of it. I grew to love it a lot. So started out in aged care, and then traveled a lot because it, allowed me to travel, and then yeah, from there went to acute care in hospitals, and mainly in respiratory, a lot of breathing stuff, which is interesting that that's the line that I'm sort of taking. I'm very heavy on breath now as well, so kind of fell into that. And cystic fibrosis as well, that was a big part of my nursing career, which is a lot to do with the lungs and the gut, and just a disease that affects quite a lot of people here in SA, and it just taking care of them. And then I guess I did massage, because after that I just wanted to, the shift work was getting to me. And I think caring for people I really wanted to continue to do that, but I felt like hospital was a little bit of a more of a challenging way of caring for people. So yeah, that's where it's all started.
And it's, for you, like looking back and connecting the dots, you wanted to work with animals, but then you fell into place with working with people. But isn't it interesting, like how you pointed out, like there was you're working with respiratory, so, and now you've gone into breath work. So it's like things are sort of falling into place from where you started from, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's a little rabbit hole that I want to explore there, just out of my own curiosity. You mentioned with the gut issues in South Australia specifically. What do you think sort of happened? Do you?
Well, there's a few people with CF across Australia, so it's not specific in Adelaide, but we do have quite a large cystic fibrosis unit in the public hospital, the Royal Adelaide here. And yeah, they're getting a lot more funding. They used to have a life expectancy of, I think it was in the 30s maybe, but now new drugs and stuff like that is more available. So I was sort of part of helping that community in South Australia, giving them medications, taking their blood and all that stuff, and home care a lot. And then just learning about fascia and all that stuff. It kind of, it was very interesting, the weavings of all of that.
Yeah. And do you think that you'll explore that aspect maybe a little bit further on down in your career? Is that something in the back of your head, or that was just a little bit of an interest while nursing?
Yeah, I've always wanted. When I first started, I was like, yeah, there's so much we could do, open their chest and their breath. But yeah, maybe one day. I think all of that knowledge really interests me. All of that learning and that nursing background will always be with me. I think once a nurse, always a nurse. So it still helps me to this day in practice in clinic. So yeah, I do wonder if maybe there's something there, but yeah, in the background.
I'm thinking about someone out there wanting to be a nurse. Do you have any advice, for the best piece of advice maybe you could give for someone that's wanting to become a nurse, or something to think about or consider?
Yeah, so the big thing that I see, and personally that I've learnt from nursing, is that nurses are very, very much givers. They give a lot of themselves, and there's a lot of a lot of very caring nurses out there who get into it for all the right reasons, who just get super burnt out. And it's an environment that can be quite draining. So there is, it's getting better, but when I was, nursing, there was not a lot of nurses who took care of themselves. And they get to a point where their health suffers. And I'm all about preventative care in my clinic, and doing one or two things you can do every single day that, create a better life for you long term. So yeah, if you're getting into nursing, or if you want to be a nurse, like, you've got to prioritize that health of yours, because your work is not worth your mental health. It's not worth your physical health, and if you can't look after someone, then, you're not there and they can't be helped. So that would probably be the one thing I would say. Make sure that your self-care is at least in your mind, and you practice that daily. Yeah.
That's really good advice, and it's a parallel we see in bodywork practitioners as well. We give a lot, but we forget to look after ourselves. And a lesson I actually learned the tail end of last year. And maybe sometimes that lesson is necessary. We can be told, and as you pointed out, it's a great thing to have in the back of your mind, but maybe it's not something you become aware of until you experience it.
Yeah.
So with massage, was that something when you're working as a nurse you were having for yourself? Because you mentioned you had some aches and pains. So were you seeking massage at that time, or what sort of attracted you to study massage, and were you getting it at the same time as well?
Yeah, so I was getting a lot of physio, a lot of massage, probably massaging like twice a week, physio 1 to 2 times a week. I was getting chiropractic. There was about 9 years ago, I had quite a big trauma in my life in terms of a relationship that was quite traumatic, and I went through some PTSD, and that was all while I was nursing as well, in a high stress job.
Yeah, wow.
And so from the PTSD symptoms, I definitely self-medicated for a long time, and found that was not helpful. So I went down the meditation path, and then I went down the massage, like, getting my body right, and, went into this real healthy eating, movement, meditation. I was getting a lot of massages that were actually making me worse. So I was still, though, curious about, like, why is my body still having all these aches and pains? And I didn't actually connect any of the PTSD symptoms to my physical pain at that point. I didn't understand the emotional body connection. I didn't understand anything about fascia or anything like that. So I really got into massage to calm my nervous system and just to relax a little bit. I was drawn to this whole idea that, I was good at giving shoulder massages. And Mum was like, yeah, you should just do this little massage course. So I went on a weekend massage course, and I met Linda. I think we both share Linda as a teacher.
We do.
Yeah, and so she was great, and I fell in love with it, and I got a buzz from it, and I just was like, oh, this feels pretty good, And at that time I was like, oh, I'll just do it on the side, and I'll, maybe it'll just be I needed something to focus on at that point, because my life was a little bit crazy, having a lot of emotional things pop up, and I just needed something to focus on at that point. And so, yeah, found massage and just loved it. Like, it was great. It was awesome. And through that, just continued to get massages, but it would somewhat make me worse. Like, my body would go into these weird aches and pains afterwards. But for some reason, I was just like, no, I need to figure out why, why I was getting worse from something that everyone's telling me should make me feel better, and I think at the time I was getting massages that were far too strong, far too aggressive, I guess, in a way, that they weren't gentle massages. They were deep, really deep tissue. And at the time it didn't feel super painful, but I did notice that my body took, 1 to 2 weeks to recover from these massages. And I just assumed that that's what was normal, because I was also powerlifting at the time and doing lots of heavy lifting. And it's almost like I was trying to, move this energy out of me by force, So
Interesting.
Yeah. So that was where I found massage.
And what did you, what did you love about massage? Because you really lit up when you were talking about it. Is there anything specific from that you really that gave you enjoyment? Because when I found massage, I was really surprised that I just did a 2-day course, and I was really surprised that I just enjoyed connecting with people and touch. But I had no hadn't experienced it before, and doing that was really surprising, and that's sort of my initial how I fell in love with it.
Yeah, I think it was a bit similar for me. It's like this, Linda, my teacher, said that, there's a massage buzz, you'll get this buzz. And I was like, oh, okay, we'll see. Yeah, and just felt after those 2 days, I felt really alive. I just sort of connected, given back to this person, made them feel good. But then I also felt really, really good for giving this treatment. And yeah, I think I just really loved the feeling, because it kind of took me out of myself, my mind for that moment, and I was just present with the body, and then I was kind of like curious as to what am I actually doing, and what's a trigger point, and what are we actually doing when we move that muscle or we massage with the oil. I just wanted to know so much more. So yeah.
And almost like a form of meditation as well, because you mentioned you did a bit of meditation, and then when you're working with a client and truly working with a client, you do become really present, and you start noticing, the feeling of what's happening under your hands. You notice your client's breath and how they're experiencing your touch. So it can be deeply meditative for the practitioner, which is pretty cool too.
Yeah, deeply healing, I think, as well. I think that was why I was drawn to it, because I knew there was something that could be healing for me as well. So yeah, that definitely drew me to it.
And I think you've sort of given the answer for this, but is that what did you find that massage gave you that maybe nursing didn't? Or did massage start to give you something that nursing couldn't, or you were just a little bit looking for something different, if you understand what I'm meaning?
Yeah. I think what massage gave me was the environment. The environment was very different with massage, that you come in and you're creating this tranquil environment. When you step into a hospital, you're instantly kind of in the buzz of it all. There's a lot of busyness, there's a lot of go. It's like very structured. You might have 5 or 6 patients, and you've got to get them up, and you've got to give them their medications on time. And so from massage point of view, I think the environment was really healing in itself. And also on top of that, you get to care for someone and you get to give back. So I think that was the difference. I didn't know it at the time. I just felt like it was like, oh, this feels really cool, and then thinking like, oh, if I could make a business out of this, or if I could, get paid while I was doing this, I could give up nursing. And, my head went into like all of these things that I could do. But yeah, that was a really drawing, like the environment just really, really sold it to me. Yeah.
That is an interesting perspective, environment. I don't know if it'd be always like this, but, you're going in from what it sounds like it can be quite a sympathetic response going straight into work. And then I can imagine why massage would have been really healing, because that environment is a healing environment. So it's one extreme to the other for you there. So in hindsight, again, for you, it's probably would have been a nice mix, because you're getting the best of both worlds to a certain extent. You're going into quite an intense environment, but then you're going into a healing environment after. So I could see how you were sort of dancing between the two for quite a while there.
Yeah, and nursing did feel very rewarding, and I didn't want to give it up. I just didn't want to do it full time. I didn't want to do it 5 days a week. And then having the pair, like you said, was really great, because when I was transitioning, I really just did my nursing and then went and did like 3 or 4 massages after work, and I just did it for a few years, built my client base, and it didn't feel like work. It just felt like what I needed to do. So yeah, it was good.
And you would have got, I imagine, more time with your client. As a nurse, it probably would have been short intervals, but obviously when you're a body worker, you've got an hour with someone, and sometimes for many weeks as well.
Yeah. And, the other thing is that you're dealing with people that actually want to be there. They really want to, they want help, and the people that are in hospital, sometimes they're not there. Most of the time, they're not there by choice. It's not something that it's sort of like um, they're not choosing to be there. And so therefore that comes with a lot of emotion, a lot of heaviness, and you kind of have to support them in all these other different ways. Whereas with massage, it's like, people actually do want to be there and they want some help. They don't know necessarily how, but you can just guide them that way. So that was really cool.
And is there something you wish you could change about, I guess, the nursing industry? If you could just wave your wand, and whether that's more time with a client, or there's something that sort of really, as a nurse when you're working, you wish you just had the power to change?
Yeah, I think a little bit more time. Nurses always need more time. But yeah, the environment is a big one. We've got a new hospital, which is better. It's got a little bit more sunlight, a little bit like the old hospital that I worked at was, there wasn't access to windows, sometimes, and not a lot of fresh air, and it was old building. So yeah, I think environment was a big one, and slowly that's changing. There's a lot more access to green outside, trees, plants and stuff. But I guess you have so many patients and so many nurses, and it's it takes a lot of management. So I would love for it to change, to have some kind of different environment that is actually really resetting for the nervous system, so people can come into a calm environment. And the nurses need more time for that. But I also think that it does start with nurses taking care of themselves first, because if they're running on, empty or 20%, they're going to be possibly making mistakes or forgetting, that's I used to forget sometimes a glass of water, or, something for a patient, and be like, oh, I have to quickly go back, and so that's one of the two things: environment and time, I think, for nurses.
Environment and time. Yeah, those are good answers. Good things. So you've gone from nursing to massage. How did anatomy trains, the structural integration, what sort of ignited, I guess, your interest into that and stepping into that world?
Yeah, so I was nursing, and then I had the massage qualification. I started, I had this two-day weekend and signed up. I was like, yep, I'm going to do the whole course. And I was seeing a physio at the time at Adelaide Advanced Physio, and his name's Patrick. He's great, and he was my physio for such a long time. And I just kept coming back to him every week, like being like, oh, it just hurts. My shoulder hurts, my hip hurts, my knee hurts. I had just all these little aches and pains. And he's like, well, now you're doing massage, you should read this book. And so he hands me the Anatomy Trains book, and I was like, oh, what's this? And I tried to read it from like the first few pages. I think it was like the 3rd edition. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I don't know about this book. But I was, I kept flipping through the pages, and I started to see these lines, these myofascial tracts, and I just was like, okay, this is interesting. And I didn't actually read a lot of it. I just kind of looked at the colorful blue lines and just thought, okay, well, yeah. And like some of it made sense to me, but a lot of it was like, I don't quite understand. But I knew that in my massage courses that I was always asking more questions, about shoulder pain, and why does the shoulder hurt? And if we're treating the shoulder, if it comes back in the next week, why is that still happening? And I had all these questions, and I remember my massage teacher getting really, she wasn't frustrated. She was just like, I can't answer all your questions, so you're going to have to go and do some study of your own. And I did. And so I signed up for the anatomy trains, and I actually did one of the movement ones with Chris and from Anatomy Trains. And yeah, it was just everything that I wanted, everything that I was like, oh, okay, wow, this is this is really cool. So yeah.
The funny part is when you mentioned asking your teacher a lot of questions, Linda, I would say about a year later, I would have been coming into her school with the same book, asking her all these questions too. And then she's like, "Oh, you need to go do the course. I can't give you the answers to the questions."
Yeah, she handled that really well, I think. But
so we probably should talk about, and I think our clients ask both this all the time, like, what on earth is structural integration? We're both specialized in structural integration, but what is structural integration? What's the structural integration practitioner, Sophia?
well, structural integration really looks at the whole body as a whole and follows the Anatomy Trains structure from Tom Myers, and really just a true structural integration 12 series is like an all over body treatment. And so we're balancing from the ground up, and then we're balancing structures above and below. And so in my practice, I'm not actually looking at your painful shoulder if you come in with a painful shoulder, which made a lot of sense for me asking all those questions about shoulders in massage. I just got fixated on shoulders. And so oftentimes in the structural integration, we're looking at things like, how's the hip moving? How's the breath? How's the rib cage? How's the neck? And so looking at these myofascial lines that have been dissected by Tom Myers and how they relate to one another and how they relate in movement. So, yeah, and then in terms of the body work, it's really intentional touch. It's slow, and it can be superficial, it can be deep when it needs to be, but it's quite gentle and should be quite gentle initially. Can be a little bit painful sometimes, but you're going with the client rather than massage is sort of feels like a doing to the tissue, whereas with structural integration, it's like doing with, and there's a lot of movement involved. It's very interactive. It's not like a relaxation massage. It's really just about connecting with the client, and as I practice more and more, we're really dealing with the nervous system and calming the nervous system in such a nice calming way, and if we look at any trauma or any kind of energy stuck in the body, which I believe that's just emotion stuck in the body creates energy, and then we get sticky tissues, and if you can provide a really safe, calm environment, just like structural integration does, then you can actually release the emotions and the trauma from the body in a really subtle way. So the client doesn't get super overwhelmed. They're also feeling your safety as well. If you can stay present with them and you can stay intentional. So yeah, that's my version of what structural integration is to me. But it's evolving as well as I keep treating. It's so much more than just a form of soft tissue work. It's nervous system stuff. It's like creating great breath as well, like expanding people's ability and awareness to feel and be inside their body, rather than being in their head or anxious and disassociated. It's really bringing them back to themselves. Yeah.
And I think you made a good point there. Like, structural integration is expanding. I always thought I was quite green when I went into studying it. I was like, this is the holy grail of body work. But as I've gone through a couple of years now, what I realized, it just opens the doors to so much more, a different way of looking at the client's body, working with the client's body. And even you pointed out certain things from the nervous system to emotions. Yeah, it's pretty profound work. Yeah. So you mentioned something called a 12 series. So a 12 series, that's what does that entail?
So that's 12 treatments of following a certain recipe, and it's really just about having each session is dedicated to a particular line or segments of that line. So we follow this particular structure so that the whole body gets balanced, and there's a particular order and sequence of the 12. But I don't, not everyone needs a 12 series, but there are a lot of people out there who, if I could just, set that as their foundation, a lot of other treatments, they don't actually need a lot of them. Yep. And like you said before, it's actually really just a great baseline, like a baseline of good open body, so that all of your other structures, all of your other organs, all of the other systems in the body get to work in like just more of an ease, So people often find that after a 12 series, they can really go and get their physio and it works, and it sticks and it stays, or their chiropractic, the chiropractors are often like, oh, that was easy to adjust you, because the fascial system's open then. So yeah, the 12 series, it's a commitment of time, and it's, can be up 3 to 6 months depending on how often you do it. I think for you had a short 12 in a matter of a week or something, 11 days, which is pretty intense. And I had a 12 when I was training, which was over like 4 weeks, I think. So yeah, I really love it. I've had a couple of 12 myself. So
would you recommend, I from working with clients, I found that weekly seems to be the best. You can do fortnightly, and again, it depends on the client, but for the best results I've seen with clients experiencing some of the things you've mentioned seems to be have one session each week over 12 weeks. Have you found that, or you found different experiences in your practice?
Yeah, it does really depend client to client. If there is a lot to be released in the body, and there's a lot of processing, depending on where they are in their life as well. I have a lot of clients that are going through a lot, and I say, let's aim for 1 week, but if we need to like push it out an extra week, then we can. So yeah, ultimately, most of my clients come in every week, but I do have clients that really do need that extra week, and have it once a fortnight. It's a nervous system thing. It's their body just recalibrating and them just taking in the changes. I also find that older clients need a lot more time to just recalibrate and have this new awareness of their body. So yeah, I've done a 12 series over 3 weeks in 3-week intervals for an older client, and that seemed to work really, really well for her. So yeah.
And you mentioned not everyone needs a 12-session series, so 12 treatments. What do you do like one-off sessions? How do you operate?
Yeah, so I do, because of my remedial background, I do other sessions. So I'll do a 60-minute session. Structural integration is normally 90 minutes, but I can do, spot treatments from 60 to 90 minutes. And that's just really focusing on 1 or 2 areas, doing a really good job of that, and just helping them with some form of relief on the painful area. So I find that that's pretty good for some people, and they don't need a lot, and it might just mean that it's just a little maintenance for them, that they're looking after themselves, they're moving enough, and that, most of those people though are moving every day, they're aware of their breath, they've got a good nutrition intake, they're drinking a lot of water, and they really do want to do what's right for their body as much as they can. And for those of the people that do need a 12 series, it's more like, okay, let's just set the foundations well, and then we don't have to do so much in the long run. So yeah.
And what people do you find come for a 12 series? Have you noticed a particular kind of pattern, or do you work with a specific kind of client? Like I generally deal with a lot of people that have chronic pain, but it might be a bit different for you on your end.
Yeah, some people come in, there's a few people that come in with some really like ongoing problems that haven't been able to be solved by physio or massage, or and yeah, that is chronic pain, that is chronic tension. And then there's people that have been seeing me for a little while that have these, not necessarily chronic pain, but it's like these chronic niggles that keep popping back, and it's an old familiar pain for their body. So little niggles of the back pain that sets them back a couple of weeks, or, you know, they're just not quite right in their body for a couple of weeks, you know, and they're not quite injured, but, you know, it's just somewhat annoying for them. And, you know, it doesn't make them feel very good, you know, especially with shoulders. And so if we look at the, you know, the effects of the joint health, we obviously want to keep those joints as open as possible. So those kind of clients are like, okay, I think it's time now to do a 12 series. So I've had, you know, clients that have been seeing me for maybe 4 or 5 years who've come and they've just had a 12 and they've gone, wow, okay, that was pretty cool. It was a really cool experience. And now they're on track. They don't feel like their niggles are coming back, and it's really easy to maintain from that point. And then I get the, you know, a rare couple of clients, you know, that really just do it because they love the recovery out of it. So they don't necessarily have anything wrong, but they do notice how good the treatment is for their recovery. And so they can go and train and feel good. They don't get any pain. They don't, you know, have to, you know, struggle going downstairs or sitting on the toilet or anything like that. It's the, yeah. So I have a fair few different clients that come in. Yeah.
And what kind of feedback do you get from clients from a 12 series? I have a lot of clients. I think the biggest one is awareness. They become, after a series, they become so much more aware of their body, or how they move, or how their postural patterns maybe at work, and they pick up on things that they had no understanding or couldn't feel before. That's always a really big piece, which is, it sounds small, but it's really powerful, and it changes lives. Those little things, just little subtle changes as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, big one is the interoception, or the awareness inside, you know. And people that either started 12 or have come in to see me for a session because their friend has recommended to come, I usually get them off the table and I say, oh, how are you feeling? And they're like, I don't know. And then by the end of, you know, the 12th session, they're, you know, oh, I can feel my right foot feels this way, or I can really feel the inside of my legs, or, you know, just like, it's just this different body awareness, where long term what that adds up to is that if you do have tension or pain in your back, you know, you've overdone it, that you can really feel that and you go, oh, okay, that's just sending me a signal, you know, that maybe I need to rest or slow down, or maybe not pick up, you know, 50 billion boxes, or go do the gardening that day. Maybe it's like a bit of a rest time, and they can really reflect on all of the things that haven't been helpful for them long term. So yeah, the body awareness is a really big one.
Yeah, I agree. It's small but profound.
Yeah.
And with structural integration, what do you feel it has? What do you think it's given you, either as, you know, as a practitioner, or having received structural integration?
Yeah. So like I said, with my history, I've had, you know, experiences with PTSD, and that created just a lot of like holding on of a lot of tension, a lot of emotion was stored in my body, a lot of fear, a lot of kind of you know, a lot of sadness, and then even some anger and stuff like that. There's all the plethora of emotions that I had, not just from the you know, the events that I experienced to cause the PTSD, but I feel like all of the things that I've been carrying in my childhood, you know, like, it's just, there was a lot of energy in my body, because I tend to hold things. I'm much better than I was, but I tend to take things in, feel it deeply, but then not express it, not let it go. And what I found was, over time, that creates a lot of, you know, stickiness in the tissues. It creates a lot of dense kind of energy stuck. And so whilst I was able to lift heavy, you know, and I was able to do lots of gym and exercise, and I was quite fit in regard, but I just wasn't able to move. And every time I did move, there was a chance of injury. So from the big thing for me was this release of emotional release, and a lot of storing of a lot of things. I had a lot of whiplash injury from car accidents. I got, you know, I had a concussion from soccer when I was playing soccer, and there was just a lot of things that happened, you know, around my head. So, you know, the head and neck, releasing that was a big thing for me. and trusting that as well, trusting the practitioner to help me release that was a big thing. And once you start to let go of all that stuff, you just do move easier and you don't hold on to things so much. I feel like sometimes it's a bit of a bucket, like you just keep adding to the bucket over and over again. And if you don't, get stuff out of that bucket, the stress bucket or the emotional bucket, it's just going to keep overflowing and there's no way for your body to fully move. So I think big thing that structural integration gave me was this emotional release, this just movement, and it was so gentle. It wasn't like I was falling on the floor or I just was able to let go in such a beautiful way. And then with that came great coordination, great fluidity to my body. I remember going from powerlifting to Olympic lifting and doing those movements and trying to get under a barbell and flick the barbell up and like catch the barbell. It was just not a good movement for me. Like I was very heavy and sluggish and I just couldn't move. I just felt really uncoordinated. But as soon as I came back from my first proper 12 series, when I did the training, it was just, it was just beautiful and fluid. Like I was like, oh, I could do that now, and then big thing for me was recovery. So not having really sore quads for 3 or 4 days after training, not having really a lot of back pain after nursing for long periods of time, being on my feet. So yeah, I think they're the big 3 things that structural integration gave me. And it does correlate to my clients as well, what it gives them on a subtle level. Yeah.
And you mentioned before regarding the PTSD, is that when you became aware of it, that it was stored within your body, like in terms of the tissue? Is that be correct in saying?
Yeah. I had something called complex PTSD, which was from a number of events leading up to, there wasn't one particular event that caused the stress in my body. But I think from a talk therapy point of view, I was getting a lot of counseling, I was getting a lot of psychology, and it was not really helping me. Like I was in counseling for a couple of years, to the point where I didn't feel like I was getting any better, and I felt like there just has to be something else here. And I was drawn to the fact that anatomy trains felt like, oh, I could help my body here. I physically won't feel any more pain. But what I did realize was those physical ailments and that physical pain, I believed, was really from this energy that I was storing in my body from all of these events, the stressful events, then add in all of the whiplash. I fell on my bum as a kid a lot. I remember that. So I had a lot of coccyx, kind of deep sacral back pain. And I think it was just an accumulation of all this stuff where I felt like, these emotions, because I remember when I was a kid, I used to fall on my bum and I'd cry, right? It would just be like, oh, I'm on my bum and it hurts, and it was like a sadness, I guess, there. And I do wonder, they do talk about emotions being stored in the fascia. There's a lot more, talk about that stuff now. But for me, it was a real like, oh, this is actually real for me. This is a lot of energy stuck in my tissues, and it wasn't relieved from massage. It wasn't relieved from physio. It was really relieved from the intentional fascial work that I got from structural integration.
And were you aware of what was happening, or was your practitioner, or is it something that you experienced after you left the table, or was it happening while you're on the table?
The head and neck, definitely. There was a lot of resistance on the table, but I've always had that open communication with my practitioners, and they knew that. So there was just such a degree of care from them to kind of go in as gently as possible. Like I felt very supported in that. And I think the way that we are taught in, the anatomy trains way is really just to have that deep connection with your client, making sure you're not going at a pace that's too quick for them, And I think that that was something that was really powerful for me. And yeah, after I had the treatments, there were times where I remember in my training, Julie Hammond, my teacher, she said, if you want to walk, you go for a walk, but if during that walk you want to run, you run. And then if you want to stop, you stop, you know. And so I remember just doing this cycle of, like, I went around the block like 3 or 4 times after I'd had a particular session. It was around my head, neck, and jaw, and I just was running and stopping and running and stopping, and just like was just moving my body. I was just like, it just gave me acceptance of like what was moving through me, and there was a lot of emotion that came up after that run. And it's almost like I just felt, oh, okay, that feels better, rather than not actually releasing, you know. And maybe for me, sometimes I would cry and I'd feel like, oh, that didn't really move anything. I still felt like a little stuck. But after this particular session, I was like, oh, it feels very different. And the next day I felt lighter and brighter. And so, yeah, there was a lot that shifted on the table. But then afterwards, it's like a process of 2 to 3 days that needs to happen. That was really profound for me.
And that's why, you know, if you do the 12 session series, it's great to have that week or 2 weeks to let your body take in that information and let go of old information as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And was that the first time with the structural integration? Because you mentioned, you know, you were having massage and it was quite hard, or maybe not the right kind of massage at that time. What was it like for you to have someone come in just with more intention, but maybe slower and with less force? What were your feelings towards that? Because obviously there's a lot of you know, no pain, no gain out there, that mentality that's sort of out there, which yeah.
And I think the big thing for me with those practitioners, I didn't have enough of a relationship, I felt, with them to trust. You know, there was what I learned so much in my training with the SI was that I was someone that really needed a lot of trust, even though I would kind of went into those treatments and I was, you know, the massage treatments with these practitioners, I felt like I was still talking to them. Like, it wasn't like I was saying no and they kept going. It was kind of like, I just felt like my body didn't trust them enough. And that takes a lot of time. And so with the SI, it was like, you have the time to build up the trust with that client. And for me, that's what I needed. I needed a big level of trust that you were going to be able to hold me in those moments. And that's what I try and create in my space, definitely, so that we're not doing things too quickly, and you know, people feel supported, and you know, the body can let go a lot more than if we can do it a lot slower. And I think the pace as well, for me, the pace of massage can be a little bit strong, a little bit fast, and I think that the SI really slows it down. And this whole concept of no pain, no gain, I've got a practitioner, Natalie, who's she's currently on 12 months on a boat. She's not working at the moment, but she's here in Adelaide, and look, she goes in deep with me, and it hurts. But there's a certain level of trust that we have between each other, that I feel that's the difference, that she can create, I guess, a little bit of pain, but it's like it's welcomed, you know.
Yeah, that's sort of why I guess before I held myself back from saying, I think it does have a place to a certain extent. It's about intention.
Yeah.
Maybe a particular client, or there's an area that needs, you know, there's going to be some level of pain with it, but it's not like what you've been talking about a lot. It's not, I'm not forcing it on the client. It's kind of like
I just think that with the movement as well, there's, you know, structural integration is all about the client moving as well. And if you can welcome them into your hands, or welcome the movement into your hands, they're in control. So it's almost like they're releasing themselves rather than you doing to them. And I think that's the big difference. You know, if I can move my hips this way and it hurts me, well, I'm in control of the pain, you know. And for someone who's gone through PTSD, it's like you're out of control, you're out of your body. There is like all these things that have been done, you feel, to you in your environment, or these traumas that have happened, and the control is taken away from you. Whereas for me, it was like, I can go into that if I want to, and I can tilt my pelvis this way, and it hurts, but I'm in control of that. The practitioner's not doing that to me. So yeah, that was really cool.
That's really cool, and good to be reminded of that as a practitioner as well. It's good to point out, and for clients, we do in structural integration, we give we invite participation, and you can choose to move into that new space, or sometimes it's something we need to explore in a different session. So, and I think from what you talked about before, someone with PTSD or a past of that might be quite profound for them to have that power to choose.
Yeah, definitely.
So how did breathwork come into play? I wanted to explore this rabbit hole straight away when you mentioned it. How did that come in?
Yeah, so I went through the 12 series training. I had a 12 series myself, and I continued to get treatment, and I still was having some problems, not necessarily with the aches and pains in my body, but like my anxiety and a lot of depression. There was still a lot going on. So I actually found neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, which worked on my unconscious patterning and repatterning my unconscious thoughts. And that would take me through some emotional release in itself. So I remember doing a 12 series amount about 12, maybe 18 months after I'd finished the training. I did another one with Natalie here in Adelaide, and I did structural integration and NLP, which in hindsight was probably a bit too much, because there's a lot of growth that's called out in that moment. And through someone that was doing the NLP with me, she was a breathwork practitioner, and so yeah, I went and did breathwork with her, and did like a 7-day retreat of breathwork. And the breathwork was like, it was like, once again, I was releasing my fascia from the inside without anyone touching me. Like it was, and the lightness that you feel after breathwork was similar to what I feel when I got off the table. But there was something very powerful that happened in the breathwork that I couldn't replicate with someone's hands on me. Like it was an internal sensation and an expansion from the inside. And when we talk about structural integration, we're actually just expanding people's breath as well. We're allowing them to take a deeper breath, a fuller breath, and we're moving the fascia so that they can breathe more effortlessly. And what I found was that you can do that with breathwork. You can open the body. It's a fascial release effectively. And some of that was emotion. There was a lot of emotion that was released. And the Soma breathwork is like an hour and a half of breathing, and it's breathing through the mouth. So it's not through the nose. It can be, to settle, but it's really an activating breath. So you're actually activating the sympathetic nervous system, and you're actually upregulating yourself. So you're kind of getting into this state, and then you start to get a little bit tingly. There's a lot of CO2 in your body. You're kind of hyperventilating effectively. So you kind of go into this euphoria, this euphoric state, and it's a natural state. And you can get tingly, you can kind of lose yourself a little bit. There was visions as well. Like I felt like I went into this realm of I felt like I was in a dream state effectively. And they've done studies around this. You produce DMT in your brain, like more DMT, which is a hallucinogen. And so you just go into this euphoric state. And that for me brought up a lot more emotion around other things that I thought I dealt with. And once again, just was able to release that and let it go. And then you come out of the breath work and you really calm your system down. And the next day, for me, sometimes I feel quite wiped from my structural integration sessions because of the lymphatic system gets a bit of a flush. You're releasing stuff, so you might feel a bit yucky the next day. And same thing with the breath work. It was like I felt really open and expansive, but equally tired. And, I just felt, but yeah, it just, the breath was like, oh, wow, this is like the next level for me to explore. And if you can get people doing some form of breath work every day, it really just keeps things open for longer, because we have a lot of people who sit for long periods, they've got a sedentary lifestyle, drink not enough water, or, sitting in their car for too long. Like the breath is a really easy way to keep your fascial system open. So I kind of was drawn to that because I was like, wow, this is really cool. So yeah.
And was that Soma, the initial retreat you went to, was that a Soma breath work?
Yeah. So they pair it with music, and they pair it with a particular theme. And we did about 3 or 4 days each day doing a breathwork session. So we're there to do the work, and the other component of that is the deep connection that was felt. You're going into breathwork with everyone witnessing you in your raw emotion, or the release of your raw emotion. There's something very powerful in that, which I had never experienced before. So there are a few things, like it wasn't just the breath, it was definitely the connection, but it was kind of like, oh, this is the next level that I feel like some people may benefit from, rather than just getting their hands on. For me, it was great. Structural integration is like awesome, and I always go back to it as my foundation. But in order for me to actually fully release and let go, the breath was where I needed to go. Yeah.
And have you since become a practitioner in this? Are you doing this with your clients, or this is something you're just doing in your personal time?
Yeah, just I was thinking of doing classes and all that, and I did dabble in that a little bit with a fascial release and opening up the breath. But yeah, I just use it for my personal and just awareness of that breath, and teaching people how to breathe deeply, and giving them sets of 10 breaths once a day. Really, really powerful. But in terms of breathwork sessions, there are a lot of great people now that are going down that path, and to come into community and doing breathwork sessions. So yeah, I have a lot of people in Adelaide that I can refer on to for that. But initially I did want it to kind of pair in, but I think that structural integration is that's my jam. Like, I really love that. And breathwork practitioners are just fantastic at that. So yeah.
And in a typical session, is it always with a large group of people, or a small group of people, or is it one-on-one?
You can do one-on-one breath work, which can be online, or can be in a room. And sometimes you're on a massage table, or you're on cushions, or whatever it may be, and that can be quite beneficial. And then also the breathwork sessions that I'm familiar with, there's anywhere between sort of 20 to 30 people in the one room, and you're all breathing together. And there's a lot of loud music, and there's a lot of potentially loud expressions, anything from sadness to screaming to rage to like whatever needs to come out, and so there's a really safe space for all of those people. And the facilitators of that are really the facilitators that I'm familiar with are really, really nurturing, and they really can hold you. And I've done some helping as well. Like, I've been a bit of I guess a guide, and we call them guardians here. So you're helping people, and you may be just supporting them energetically, or just holding space for them. And yeah, it's just a really beautiful way to witness people in their expression, and just help them move this energy, this shifted energy. So, and you can definitely see where people are stuck when they're breathing. Like, the hips might not be moving, or, they're only breathing into their upper chest. And as soon as they get down into their belly, deep down into their pelvis, when they start breathing really deeply about the 30-minute mark, it's like, that's when all of this stuff gets brought up. It's like, oh, okay, what did that unlock? And what did that move that made you cry a little bit, or shake. Some people shake. So yeah, if you haven't,
like, that's typical. You've seen that like around the 30-minute mark for most people. That seems to be
yeah, and usually the music is starting to amplify, and there's emotions that are being brought up from the music as well. But yeah, around about that 30-minute mark, people start to get into like, what are they here to shift and move? And they meet their resistances too, because some people don't allow themselves to release, because it can be scary for some people. But the breath will definitely guide you to where you need to go. So yeah.
Yeah, I was curious for yourself, like going into an environment like lots of people, it could be a bit, it could maybe cause a little bit of anxiousness, but it sounds like from what you said, there's really good facilitators that make it a really nurturing environment.
Yeah, there's a lot of sharing before and after. There's a lot of education around what to expect. And most of the time people have their eyes closed. You're either lying down or sitting up. And so there's not really anyone looking at you. We're not, and to create that safe space for those people. But people will meet their resistances, and they'll go, I really wanted to do more. I really wanted to let go more. But I'll have to do that next time. And then, they might come in for a second breathwork session, and then they start to release a little bit more. So you're in control again. It's a bit like structural integration. You're in control of how much you're breathing, because if you don't want to breathe, you feel like it's overwhelming, you just come back to a normal breath. So yeah.
And are there any other schools of breath work that you look at? Because obviously there's so much out there with breath work now, and they're all very, very different and really, really interesting. Is this Soma the only one you're exploring at the moment, or have you dabbled in other areas of breath work?
Soma's the only one that I've sort of done some training in, but I'm familiar with Oxygen Advantage, which is more about performance, and that's quite helpful for. I do some ice baths, from time to time, which is really good for the nervous system and fascia as well. And I've tried some Wim Hof as well. I've been guided through some Wim Hof before an ice bath, and that's been helpful. And holotropic breath work is really something that I would love to explore a little bit more, and that's more like 2 to 3 hours with with people who are, you have 2 or 3 people around you supporting you, one like sort of 3 to 1, and holotropic is more intense, I've heard, like it's it's all about emotional release, but you're really held in that. It's really quite a safe space in that regard. But it's breath work, it's really 3 hours of breathing it's exhausting sometimes for people. But yeah, holotropic is definitely
kind of like holotropic. Is that the same kind of breathing method, like rhythmical breathing, I guess hyperventilation, as Soma, but it's just the long form version, or is there some other differences that's you may be aware of? Or
yeah, holotropic is similar to the Soma in the rhythm. But yeah, I think it's holotropic's more supported in that way, like you have people around you specifically there for you, whereas Soma can be a little bit more individual, and you kind of not left to your own devices, but you are supported from afar. So yeah.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, that seems interesting for doing that for 3 hours, from 40 minutes to maybe an hour with Soma, and then stepping up to that. And yeah, I guess it's in the name, isn't it? Breath work.
Yeah.
So what sort of led you to start your own business? Because I see you've opened up your own clinic now in Adelaide. Is that right?
Yep.
And that's Muscle Sense.
Yes, Muscle Sense in Adelaide. Yep, in Norwood. Yeah, I was treating from clinic room to clinic room. I had 2 clinics, one down south and one in near the city. And there was one in Norwood that you came to for some training. I was there for a few years. But yeah, I think COVID hit, and I think, yeah, we were reopening. I can't remember, but it's a couple of years ago now, but then I decided to actually go out on my own and have my own space. So I took that on, opened up a clinic, and then hired a massage therapist, which was kind of cool. And then shortly after, just hired another massage therapist, and then I think COVID got a little bit worse. And I then hired my third massage therapist, which was awesome. But I just
Impressive that you were still growing as well during COVID times as well.
Yeah.
Like with
We got heaps. We got really busy. Yeah, we got really busy because I think people were starting to really want to put their health first. So yeah, and then shortly after that, I think COVID was kind of getting a little bit worse. So I decided that I wanted to go back on my own because I was losing my connection to my clients. I was really not doing the things that I really wanted to do. I was kind of like I didn't have a clinic manager or anything. It was me, I was doing it all. So yeah, then I said goodbye to my lovely massage therapists, which are awesome people. And now I'm back on my own. I'm still in the same space, but I'm just downstairs in a really big, lovely area. People can walk around, and yeah, it's a really great clinic space.
And sometimes there's this view that, you need to have a large staff to be successful, but you can be a solo practitioner and have really great success and find more value in that. I think that's something I resonate more with, that rather than having a large team. But amazing that you ran a little team there in COVID. That's very impressive.
Yeah, and it tied into the breathwork, actually. Like the 7-day retreat that I went on. Before that, I left my clinic for 7 days, and I went away and I did all of this emotional release, and I got really clear on what I wanted. And I came back and I was really like, this is just not working. Like, I don't want this for myself. I actually want to be on my own. And I think this idea of success, of like, what is success? And success to me was owning a clinic with lots of different employees, but that takes a lot of work. There's a lot that you need to sacrifice in order to grow the clinic. And, staff come and go, and, COVID, and like, closing down and opening, and like, just, it was a lot. There was a lot of moving parts, and I was not really getting what I wanted out of it. I think because success to me was nurturing my clients and being a better practitioner, and I was losing that. And I hadn't done training for like 3 years, which was like really foreign to me. And I was like, oh, I miss learning. I miss being the student.
And sometimes we have to go on this big journey to realize what we truly wanted was in the backyard the whole time.
That's right. So true.
So what I love asking this question. What keeps you passionate about what you do? How do you maintain that passion?
Good question. For me, it's my clients. It's like, it's really watching them go through these milestones in their life, and also the clients that I feel like I'm not helping, or that maybe I'm not helping as much as I think that I can. That really, I'm thinking about my clients all the time, like how I can help them more. And, if I see a video or something, I'm like, oh, that would be great for, so-and-so. And I think that really keeps me just super curious about what more I can learn. And I think for me, honing in on how I helped myself, and learning more about that, I think what I did with massage and what I did with structural integration is I just wanted to do it all. I wanted to be the best, and I wanted to be really good at my anatomy, and I wanted to know exactly where things were. And Julie Hammond, my teacher, she just got me like from 0 to 1,000 really in my anatomy knowledge. And it's good, it's at a good level, because I did struggle a fair bit with some of the quizzes that we did. But I learned a lot, so much throughout the anatomy trainings, and I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be the best of the best. But what I'm realizing now is that you don't have to be the best of the best. You don't have to know exactly where that muscle is pulling, or that fascia, where the fascia is pulling, in such details. I think for me, it's more about really connecting with my clients, and actually, what are we doing in the treatment room if we're not allowing them to feel safe? If we're not allowing them to be present in their bodies. And So I did learn a lot for the first couple of years. I got really good at structural integration. I just did the 12 series as the 12 series. But now I'm noticing that I'm a little bit more freestyle. I'm a little bit more able to kind of look at what is really important for this client. Do they actually need more treatment, or do they need to have another way of thinking or another way of talking about things? Or maybe they just need to do some breath, and calm the nervous system down. What do they actually need, rather than being super good at one particular thing, or the best of the best? So yeah.
That's a great answer. So you talked about before at the very start of the show about burnout in terms of nursing. Is that something you've experienced now as a structural integration practitioner? Have you experienced burnout as a...
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Many times, yeah.
And what have you learned from those experiences?
What have I learned? Yeah, because prior to me having the clinic, I had a pattern which I was made familiar with the NLP that I mentioned before. So I would have this. I can't even really explain it, but it was like this. I would run and run and run on this treadmill, and I would go and go and go. I'd be so passionate about what I was doing that I just needed to get somewhere, and I didn't really know where that thing was, but I would just be going and going and going. And there were points where because I love structural integration so much, I just wanted to do it all the time. So I was working like 7 days a week at some point, and I was nursing one of those days as well. So I was my Fridays would be nursing in the morning, and then I would treat in the afternoon. And so, yeah, would just go and go and go. And then I'd burn out, and I'd either get sick, or, I would just crash and just like feel really lethargic. And I would notice that my treatments would not become so good. And that happened, over the sort of 5 or 6 years I've been doing it. It's happened 3 or 4 times where I've felt completely burnt out, and then I lose passion for what I do, right? So it's like and then you go back into this cycle of like, oh, I'm rested now. And then you're like, oh, I love what I do again. So passionate again. So was it a way of me reigniting my passion? I'm not sure. Like, I guess in some ways it would, because it was my body's way of telling me, like, you're doing too much. You're actually saying yes to too many things. And I don't think we'll always get that balance right. It's like riding a bike. You kind of have to always keep balanced. But now I feel like I've just been really honest with what I actually want. And the large amount of burnout that came from me was when I was opening up the clinic, and when I had employees, I completely lost my passion. And I was like, do I actually want to do this anymore? And I really questioned that. And as soon as I let go of the clinic and having, 3 employees, I was like, oh, I feel, I've like reignited that passion again. So I think just burnout is more, to me, from my perspective, is actually just not doing the things you love. It's not about doing too much. It's really just not doing the things that are in alignment with who you are and what you want to do and where you want to go in your life. And as soon as I got really clear on that, like I have abundance of energy now, I do prioritize my rest though. Like, I'm not silly around that stuff, but I just feel like I could have I could just keep working and working. Worked, yesterday, did some social media, just creation. And I still feel like, okay, I worked a Saturday. Awesome. Like, it doesn't feel draining. I do it when I want to. And so there's a lot of ebbing and flowing now, rather than a go stop kind of energy.
Yeah. Fantastic. It's fantastic you've found that. And on the subject of your social media, you've been doing such a fantastic job. I'm like your secret stalker on
Thanks.
on Facebook, but I see you're not going to be on Facebook anymore. You're taking a break.
Yeah, I'm just honing in on Instagram, really, because I just find that a lot more. I use it a lot more, and I'm just not on Facebook much. And yeah, just really trying to hone in, like, energy, right? You kind of hone in what you want to do, and I feel like Facebook doesn't really get much of my attention anyway. So why would I focus my energy there? And it's just one extra thing I have to do. That I would just prefer to have more energy for the things that I want to do. So.
That's I'm gonna listen to this again, but I'm going to note it down. I think that's fantastic. You've highlighted about what we put our energy into and how it could be wasted energy. Because I've spent maybe a lot of time on marketing, but maybe it's the wrong kind of platform or the wrong type of media that I'm doing that seems to be taking too much energy from me. So that's a really good advice there, Sophia. I'm going to take that on myself.
Well, how do you feel? How do you feel after the podcasts? Do they bring you alive?
Well, this is the second one I've done, but I feel really, really happy. I like talking to people, and then as you maybe have experienced, the work that we do can be very isolating to a certain extent because we're in a little room for most of the day, if not weeks at a time. And sometimes we may have other practitioners in the clinic and when you have staff, but sometimes you only see them for a small space of time. So we don't really have an environment where there's lots of work colleagues and you can all catch up in the hallway. It's sometimes it's very isolating. So this platform for me is great because I get to nerd out and talk to other practitioners and get really great tips too.
Yeah, that's great. Do more of that.
I will. So I have one more question for you. I'd love to finish the show with this question. What is the one thing you want to achieve either for yourself or your business for this year, the 2023?
Yeah. So I've got some big online goals. I'd love to I think structural integration doesn't have a big enough name, there's, I call it myofascial bodywork as well sometimes, because I feel structural integration, true structural integration is definitely a 12 series to me, but myofascial bodywork incorporates a lot of other things that I was talking about, like breath work and other things. So I think fascial work in general, I would really love for people to understand it more and for them to know that there's something else out there other than the things that they're doing already that maybe they aren't getting results for. So I really have a few ideas that I want to sort of step out more onto the online space and create more of an education for practitioners, because I feel like even if practitioners are just given just a little bit of the structural integration stuff that we know, and hopefully they go and do more of the training and with the anatomy trains would be awesome. And we do need more practitioners, but I find if they can just have a little bit of this or a little bit of that and just opens their field and for them to understand a little bit more of what else is out there, then I think we have better practitioners. And ultimately for me, if we have better practitioners who don't burn out, who are doing what they love, then the clients benefit. So I'd really love to get more into the online area and that's social media and maybe some education content. So
well, from what I've seen from your social media so far, I think you're doing a fantastic job highlighting the kind of work that we do. And it's one of the other big comments we get from clients is, why haven't I heard about this kind of work before?
Yeah.
And I think the same can be said with the students that come through and do structural integration training as well. Like, we give them a complete different toolkit and it can be quite profound. And you even said it 10x your anatomy, and to see how far you've gone from when I first met you is pretty amazing. So I really look forward to seeing that grow for you.
Yeah.
Well, Sophia, thank you so much for jumping on the show with me. I really appreciate your time and everything you've shared today. It's been fantastic to have a talk, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday in Adelaide.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Lewis. It's been great. It's been a good chat.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sophia.